The most unbelievable thing, friends, is having politicians with such short-sighted views and such limited knowledge that they blame everything they can't do, aren't capable of, or are negligent about on climate change. And yes, this is the result of a change, but not climate change, a change in how politics is conducted and prevention is handled, in the way people reach high positions in politics. It's no longer about ability, management, or experience. No, now it's about jockeying for position within the parties, about being friends with the leader. It doesn't matter who gets to the top as long as they're obedient to the party they're supposed to obey.
Because our grandparents and great-grandparents weren't fools, they cleared the forests how? Through the shepherds, because the shepherds took the cattle to graze, and that meant there wouldn't be any during the hot season. No dry brush or anything like that. And another thing, because back then there were people who weren't paid, but they took care of the forests because they collected firewood, sold it, lived with dignity, and that way unemployment was brought down.
Some politicians allegedly have mistreated women, but even so, we weren't listened to, not even by the Prosecutor General's office, right? That's what I've always been denouncing. As far as I'm concerned, if you pay for sexual services, hey, if both you and she have a good time, hire whoever you want. What I can't allow is the way they treat them, which is what I've been denouncing for a long time. But the feminists and the Minister of Equality, the Ministry of Equality, and so on aren't interested. Thank you.
The first few times he paid for my services, it was fine. He was respectful, fine. But after a few days, what he was asking me to do, it was obvious that I couldn't do it.
We're talking about drug use. In other words, that high-ranking government official was asking you to use drugs while you were with him.
Yes.
No one should go to Spain's sectarian public television run by Pedro Sanchez. Any kind of center-right commentator or political analyst shouldn't go. And tell the public not to watch, not to tune in. In my house, we don't watch channels 1, 2, or 6, and we won't watch that new 7th one they're announcing either. I can already tell it's going to be garbage. So I'm not even going to have it on my TV.
Castillón Confidencial by Albert Castillón. Thank you for staying there, alert in the trenches, watching out for whatever might happen, for whoever might approach on the horizon with lies, with hoaxes, with dirty tricks. We're here to try to tell you what others don't, based on the information we have, what we investigate, and always searching for the truth. Thank you for being there, and a big thank you. Look, the first video of the fire that has caused so far 13 deaths in Spain. The first one is this one you're watching, and it shows that it was a high voltage transmission tower that supplied electricity to a restaurant that closed in 2009. And the cable was still supplying electricity, the cable was still running. Why? Because they kept the power on. The supply was active, in this case by the company Endesa, even though the restaurant had closed in 2009. We'll have to ask Endesa why, and how many alleged cases of negligence like this we'll have to put up with. Because look, the main cause of forest fires in Spain isn't cigarette butts thrown from a car, no. It's lightning and high voltage power lines. Therefore, there's little we can do about lightning, but with the other issue, I think there's still a lot to be done. This video that several sources from the area sent me provides some more information. A rumor spread over the weekend because of a video from my friend Danny Esteve, who was asking whether it's a coincidence or not that the official State Gazette published in 2023 and 2024 some solar farms very close to the site of the fire. Well, it's good to have doubts because I would have them too. They're capable of anything, right? Those who install wind turbines and solar panels, ask for Estalia, several of their leaders will end up in prison. The truth is that we have contacted the people who were against those solar farms, who protested against it in that area. And I trust their word. They assure me, and we've spoken with several of them, that there is no connection between the installation of those solar farms and the fires. In fact, what was published in the BOE that they've seen is about 25 to 30 kilometers from where the fire started. Another thing is, if now they want to get involved in the burned area and put up more panels, that's where we need to keep a close eye. Why? Because the neighbors who protest against them always do so because of the damage to the landscape that comes from filling a mountainside with solar panels instead of olive trees or greenery. If they're going to do that in the future by taking advantage of the burned area, I hope they let us know so we can report it from here. But everything in its own time. And trying to find the truth, which is what we should do. The worst thing about the 13 deaths, gentlemen, is that they could have been avoided. And I also think it's extremely serious that all weekend the focus was put on those who died, saying that they didn't want to follow the instructions, that they were warned, that they were told which roads to take, and that they should have left. It's very undignified and even very hard to hear that. Just imagine how the families feel after knowing that most of them weren't warned, that with the smoke you can't see where you're going, and that no one gave a general directive on what to do. Because not even the people in those homes and cars trying to flee ever had a team come to inform them. There weren't enough teams. Look, in Andalusia to begin with, there isn't even an emergency plan in more than 80% of the territory. Not even an emergency plan. For example, in the entire province of Almeria, there are only 2 towns that have an emergency plan. 2. In all of Almeria, which are the town of Maria with 1,200 inhabitants and the town of Tijola with 3,500 inhabitants. The rest, massive lack of protection. Without cleaning the forests, with job insecurity for firefighters and a lack of resources. But Bolaños is very clear about who is to blame.
We're seeing wildfires unlike any before in our country's history. Climate change, the climate emergency, is evident.
We should ask Bolaños why Sanchez uses 3 planes to go to the NATO summit, but there are only 7 to put out all the fires in Spain. Something's wrong, isn't it? Either take the 3 planes away from Sanchez and use them to put out fires, or buy more. The truth is that the 7 we have are old. They constantly break down because they're overused. They fly many more hours than they should. That's for the planes, the amphibious ones. As for the helicopters, the situation is very similar. 10 helicopters for the entire country. The number has been frozen since 2007, meaning Rajoy didn't buy a single one either. 20 years waiting for prevention to improve, and what they've done is reduce it to the minimum. We're giving you all official data. From 1968 until today, 5 of the 10 largest fires recorded in Spain have all occurred in the last 3.5 years. Strange, isn't it? In 50 years, 60 years, and all the most serious ones, at least half of them in the last 3 years. An official fact, almost 40% of the burned area in the European Union is concentrated in Spain. It would make you think and assume that in Spain, the budget to prevent fires is higher than anywhere else in the European Union, because of the hours of sunlight, forested area, and the data we're giving. Well, it's actually far below the average. The European Union average is 0.5% of public spending. Spain, when it comes to fire prevention, barely reaches 0.4%. Just to give you an idea, Germany is at 0.6%, much higher, and Romania beats it at 0.7%. Here, nobody wants to invest a single euro in prevention. Why? Because it doesn't make the news, because it doesn't give screen time to the short-sighted politician who only wants to stay in power to keep getting paid for another 4 years. Here's an example. The current government's spending under Pedro Sanchez on equality is three times the spending on fire prevention. For equality, 525 million euros. For fire prevention, it doesn't even reach 116. That's 34% less than in 2022 and 60% less than in the last 15 years. Spending on fire prevention has been cut more and more each time. Sanchez's usual answer isn't this. No, it's something else. Climate change.
I've said it many times. The climate emergency kills. We're seeing it all over Europe. We're also seeing it in Spain, unfortunately.
Experts say that if instead of 100 or 200 million a year, 1 billion were invested in fire prevention. In Spain, both regional administrations, communities, and the central government, the savings for the state would be more than 90 billion, which is what it costs us to pay for it. The expensive part is putting out a fire. The cheapest is preventing it. One wonders to what extent someone has an interest in keeping the firefighting business going, a business from which hundreds of companies make a living. Bolaños said it's an exceptional situation. Sanchez said that all of Europe is the same. All of Europe is not the same as Spain. Spain suffers the worst fires in Europe with the lowest fire prevention figures in the entire European Union, and this has been the case for 15 years. And don't expect the People's Party with Juanma Moreno to brag about it. He sounded just like a PSOE minister.
Here, climate change is having a very significant impact. And we're seeing it in climate chaos with situations that are practically unknown, very exceptional, and increasingly explosive.
Something never seen before, says Juanma Moreno. Yes, what's never been seen before is that 60% less has been invested in 15 years. It's unheard of that we have 7 operational planes because the rest are out of order. What's never been seen before, my friends, is having politicians who are so short-sighted and so poorly informed. They blame climate change for everything they can't do. Are they incapable or just negligent about climate change? And yes, this is the result of a change, but not climate change. A change in the way politics and prevention are done, in the way people reach high political positions. It's no longer about ability, management, or experience, no. Now it's about elbowing your way through the parties, about being friends with the leader. It doesn't matter who gets to the top as long as they're obedient to whatever party label they answer to. This way of reaching power thanks to lies, to very populist messages on Twitter, very quick ones that have no depth, where the experts don't rule, the card-carrying party politician rules, leads us to this, to 13 people dying again because of fires. They say climate change kills, says Sanchez. Well, I don't know who's winning the battle. Since he's been in Moncloa, between a poorly managed pandemic and a negligent flood where he abandoned them, forest fires with deaths every summer, and a train that, due to corruption and negligence, turned into Spain's worst train disaster, I don't know who kills more, Mr. President, climate change or your constant negligence and corruption. Friends, don't let yourselves be fooled. You will hear many lies about what is happening. Look for information, ask for data, ask the firefighters, the forest defense agents, those who risk their lives and are not in an office pretending to do something with a yellow vest. Ask those who are on the front lines of the fire. They know exactly what is happening and why it is happening. Welcome, we investigate.
Sponsored by Fácil Rápido Seguros, all your insurance. Subscribe.
Castillón Confidencial by Albert Castillón.
Gentlemen, the Spanish government is spending 4 million euros on a campaign to abolish, as they say, prostitution. The campaign is aimed at men. Listen to it.
There has always been silence about this. Not anymore. They recommend us for excellent value, rate us highly, and compare us favorably. Erica, 10 out of 10.
These reviews are an example of objectification and the use of women's bodies. They are not services, they are not clients, they are assaults, they are aggressors. Ministry of Equality, Government of Spain.
I still remember those words from Abalos when he asked Risto Mejide if he had ever paid for sex. Do you remember?
I am absolutely against the sexual exploitation of women, but also of men. It disgusts me that someone has no other option but to submit to a sexual encounter they normally wouldn't have.
Have you ever paid for sex?
Well, but I don't know. I fortunately haven't needed to resort to that. And among other things, I'll tell you, it gives me no satisfaction, Ana Pastor.
How are you? How's it going, my colleague?
Hello, good evening. Well, here we are again, right? With debates with these politicians who are throwing all the Spanish people's money in the trash.
My God, a new campaign. Have they forgotten about 4 million? Or do they want us to forget about Tito Berni, about how Abalos and Coldo chose the sex workers in a very degrading way? About those WhatsApp messages we've read. They want us to forget about everything. I doubt they'll succeed. Have you seen this campaign? Thoughts?
I only watched 5 seconds because I couldn't stand anymore. I've had enough. If the Spanish government wanted to return to prostitution, they would have already done so. The thing is, they don't do it because they know what they're up against. And on the other hand, if it were regulated, these things wouldn't exist. From the forums, when they say we can do it bareback because there would be regulation, and as such, there would be an information course and above all, a set of rules. So that these women can work with resources, like I said, just like in any other job, right? And protection, safety and protection.
Of course, when you say they know what they're up against, what do you mean?
Well, because the times they've tried, it has backfired on them, right? First, they started with the Abalos case. With Tito Berni, and it went badly for them. Then they started again and Abalos came up. Then several public figures from the PSOE came out. Then there were also reports of assaults, alleged sexual assaults among the women in their parties. Then the feminists turned on me, so I told them, if you can't defend your own women, how will you defend sex workers when you don't even listen to them? And they know that every time they start with this, they're going to keep losing because they know there's more. This just keeps adding up.
The worst part isn't that there are people, very high-ranking officials, for example, Minister Abalos or Congressman Tito Berni, who have used that service, right? That's not the worst part. The worst part is that afterwards they sign up for abolition while treating them that way. There's something here you told me once, the way these people, these very high-ranking PSOE officials have treated sex workers has been very degrading in most cases, right?
I don't care if they pay with their own money because in the end, I've always said, right? What we provide is happiness. Even if some people think otherwise, it's happiness. On trafficking, we've shown it's not 90% and is steadily decreasing. These feminists keep lowering the number, proving they were lying. More victims, more money for them, which is what they're interested in. And then we've also shown that some politicians allegedly mistreated women, but even so, we weren't listened to, not even by the State Attorney General's office, no. That's what I've always been reporting, that if you pay for sexual services, hey, if both you and she have a good time, hire whoever you want. What I can't allow is the way they treat them, which is what I've been reporting for a long time. But the feminists and the Minister of Equality, the Ministry of Equality, and so on aren't interested. That's what I've been reporting, the way those in power treat these women and the abuse of power they wield over them, who then end up, unprotected.
Well, just imagine if the sex worker doesn't have her papers in order and her client is a high-ranking official from the administration, one of those who appear on the news every day. Well, the fear is terrible for this woman, right? Because the client's power is absolute. I'm going to introduce you to someone. She's a friend of Susana. She's a sex worker. She's from a Latin American country, and she's been in this situation with a very high-ranking official from the government of Spain. Hello, Sarah. How are you?
Hello, good evening. Good, thank you.
Well, did you know who you were with? Did you know that the person you were with was a high-ranking government official?
No, well, at first I didn't. Not until he told me himself.
How did he put it?
Well, we were on one of the many dates I had with him, and it was pretty much one of the last ones because I was already feeling like I didn't want to continue anymore. Then he tells me that if I don't do what he wants, he'll send me back to my country. I mean, because he tells me, I'll send you back to your country. Like he's the authority, like he can do whatever he wants. That's when he told me, because I'm so-and-so, and I...
Because he told her the position he had, and at that moment when he revealed his position, which, Susana, I have to say you've confirmed it's not something this friend is making up.
I've experienced it too, remember?
Remember?
That day at my place, even I have experienced it. So, I mean, it's nothing that surprises me, and it already happened with Tito Bernie, and well, then the UCO has also shown that with the Coldo case, it's nothing new for us. It's always the same pattern.
You are hearing Sarah's voice distorted because she is afraid because your situation is not completely legal in our country yet, and these people can make your life impossible. That's how it is you're afraid, right?
Yes, of course, because at any moment I think that if I go out on the street, I feel like, no, someone is going to recognize me. And right then, I don't know, they're going to do something to send me back to my country. I mean, I'm really scared.
But have you been threatened?
Well, when he told me that, ever since then, I've been very afraid to go out on the street.
Since you found out who he was and the high position he held in the government.
Exactly.
Sarah, are you the one who says enough is enough? The one who decides to drop that client because of the mistreatment?
Yes, well, the first few times he hired me, he was fine. He was a respectful man, but after a few days, what he was asking me to do, it was obvious that I couldn't do it. We're talking about...
Are we talking about drug use?
Yes, of course.
I mean, that person, a high-ranking government official, asked you to use while you were with him.
Yes. He asked me to do things that just weren't in me, things I wouldn't normally do. So when he saw that I said no, or when he saw that I refused to do what he wanted, that's when his anger would start right there, and that's where it all began. He started telling me. Then came the stage when he told me who he was and what he could do according to him.
Did he ever hit you?
He did grab me. He did get rough with me.
To grab you hard, to shake you, right? Yes.
Like when you say you have to do it, hard.
This is the third time I've heard it, Susana. I heard it in the mistreatment of sex workers linked to Jose Luis Abalos. Tito Bernie didn't treat them any better. What's going on? What's happening? Don't they know that besides the inconsistency of wanting to abolish what they consume, there's also this, right? The mistreatment, the abuse.
I know I sound repetitive, but if this were regulated, these issues wouldn't happen. It's really about abuse of power, isn't it? They think they're invincible. They think no one can take them down until eventually with time, though time moves very slowly for everything we go through. And it goes so slowly that many fall along the way and some we never know about. And that's the problem, that since it's not regulated, we're not being monitored, they're afraid, and this is where they use their power even more. And it's such a shame, isn't it? It's 2026, and as much as we want to end labor and sexual exploitation and labor and sexual trafficking, it's precisely those in charge who are allegedly treating these women the worst.
Susana, I know you've always cooperated with the authorities whenever they've asked you. Does the Civil Guard Central Operative Unit know about what we're talking about?
Look, sometimes we've also come up against things we've wanted to report and we haven't been able to, okay? Because of who they were. Sometimes we weren't listened to. I've reported him to the Attorney General's office several times. Sometimes we've wanted to do more than we could, right? In the end, I'm just a humble person without the resources to take it that seriously. Sometimes out of fear, I've also had to stop, okay? Because yes, sometimes I've been afraid because I've also experienced harassment, not like these women, but yes, in other circumstances. So it's not easy, Albert. And the work we do isn't easy, and it's not easy to have to hide these women in 2026 because the ones who are getting millions of euros to help these women are never actually there.
You haven't answered me if the UCO collaborates or knows about what you're saying, but I mention it because there's a report from the UCO in which the person we're talking about will appear, the one you and I both know is, and which will come to light soon. I hope so. I'd like to know if this appears in that report. I hope so.
But it's not just this person, there are more. The problem is that there are more. Let me repeat, Albert, if someone hires, well, moments of happiness, everyone does it out of necessity or affection or whatever, or because they want to have fun. I'm not going to get into that because I've been in this industry for 15 years, and honestly, I've seen more abuse from people in power than from our dear clients.
That's terrible. Sarah, if you were asked to testify before a judge with your safety guaranteed, would you do it?
Oh, I don't know.
It depends on what you negotiate and under what conditions they ask.
It's just that it's complicated.
Well, I understand that your priority is to keep your people, your family, your folks out of it, right? And if that can be done, then we can see about the rest. Well, I hope it doesn't happen again because what you're telling me is serious. A high-ranking official, a very senior one, yes, doing these activities.
Yes, no one else does the same for him.
By the way, do you identify with any political ideology at all?
No.
Neither right nor left?
Nor is no political.
What can I say? You know them well, right? Yes. Sarah, a big hug.
Same to you. Thank you very much.
Anytime. Dear Susana, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We always say that. You're going to see the campaign in the media, on radio, on TV, as if they were the defenders of women. Well, here's the proof. And the worst part is what you said. In 2026, this woman can't speak openly because the political power would destroy her.
If it weren't for that campaign money, they should use it to really help these women. Thank you.
Susana Pastor, a big hug. Thank you as always.
Hugs.
We're waiting for you at the home of sparkling water, Vichy Catalan.
I received an email from Mauricio, a loyal confidant. He says, I am Colombian and we are outraged by the presence in Spain of a Colombian terrorist, Rodrigo Yondoño Echeverri, alias Timochenko, former commander of the FARC. Izquierda Unida has invited him to Spain for some talks, some events about peace. He is a terrorist. He has kidnapped, he has recruited children, he raped a girl who was forcibly recruited at the age of 13. I urge you to report the presence of this criminal in Spain. Please look at him, and if you find him on the streets of any Spanish city, be careful. He is a terrorist who lives in Colombia, who is in Spain until July 11th, invited by United Left. By the way, this terrorist supported Cepeda, not De La Espriella, in the last Colombian elections. He was trained in Cuba and in Russia. He participated in and ordered thousands of kidnappings and hostage takings. Thousands of children and teenagers were recruited for the FARC against their will. He abused, tortured, and committed sexual violence, allegedly both he himself and his troops. For example, against this woman. The woman you are seeing, Lusari Palomar Quintero, has accused him of raping her when she was 13 years old, getting her pregnant, and forcing her to have an abortion. And I told him, this young woman says in her complaint, I told him not to rape me, and then he put the gun to my head. Well, this guy, this savage, is now in Spain, as I said, invited by United Left. He ended up accumulating over 100 arrest warrants. Even Interpol has been looking for him for narco-terrorism. And the United States even offered $5 million for his head. Here, as always, we invite the worst people around. Do you know the risk and fear that Colombia has? It's that he might stay here. It's that he doesn't come back, because with the change of government, now these cases are going to be investigated. With Gustavo Petro, his friends weren't investigated. Petro was also a guerrilla in terrorist groups, right? Javier Maria Perez Roldan, dear lawyer from Haste Oír, how are you?
Hello, good morning.
We can't prevent these people from coming, or at least when they're here, the public prosecutor should act on its own and have them detained.
The authorities can indeed act on their own initiative. And what's surprising is precisely that Izquierda Unida and all the left who make a fuss because Rajoy says he won't stay for the France match, they have here a supposed rapist, terrorist, or someone who has committed practically every crime in the penal code. He forced people, made slaves, because there they enslaved people there to make them join the guerrillas. And yet that person can be invited. The prosecutor's office can act on its own initiative, requesting the judge to order their detention as long as there is an open case somewhere, either in Colombia or in Spain. What I don't know anymore are the details of whether there is any open case against him. But in any case, it's scandalous.
In Colombia there is, but in Spain there isn't. And please, how can we invite people like that? How? What image does Spain project when Venezuela's worst people are walking around here? We have most of the Chavismo's enforcers living like kings here, don't we? Carlos Marcos, keep an eye out in Galicia. He might be around there.
But what I don't understand is why you're surprised. It's normal for a guy who has been a terrorist and is accused of sexual abuse to come to Spain. In Spain, there's a law that releases sexual harassers, and the government specializes in setting terrorists free. Therefore, if I were a terrorist or a rapist, I would come to Spain. It's where a government like Pedro Sanchez's offers the most advantages to this kind of criminal.
Right? Well, after Venezuela, which has stopped being or is gradually ceasing to be a sanctuary, there's Cuba, there's Spain, there's Brazil, and not much else. No, well,
let's see about Venezuela, because they found that disgusting terrorist alive among the ruins. I hope that once they treat him, they send him to Spain to stand trial.
Thank you, but we
still need to see whether Venezuela will cooperate, because for now, the only cooperation with Venezuela that has been more than proven is the attention they've given to the ETA terrorists who fled to Venezuela to live the good life there.
It's incredible, Counselor, that we know where they are, where they live, that they talk about it in interviews, and nothing happens here. In Venezuela, they've been allowed to do whatever they want. And nowadays, that should mean immediate deportation, right? The United States isn't in charge.
In the case of Chistu, well, Dignity and Justice has filed a criminal complaint precisely to hold him accountable. Because what's surprising is that he was there, calmly living with his wife, and the building collapsed on him because of the earthquake. And that's how we found out he was there. But what happened? Before, no one knew he was there. The Venezuelan government didn't know he was there. There was so much closeness between Zapatero, the Podemos members, Sanchez, and the Venezuelan government. And they never, ever bothered to say, stop being sanctuaries and send back the terrorists who have killed children, who have killed civil guard officers, who have killed innocent people, so they can be brought to justice. Because none of their completely insane political demands were to blame, not at all.
By the way, speaking of Zapatero, have you heard anything about the jewels? Because he said, in 10 or 15 days, I'll give an explanation, and it's already been a month.
And months will go by, and he won't give any explanations. As someone under investigation, he has the right not to testify. What happens is that I think he was too confident and basically said, well, I'll testify later, because he was convinced he could get some fake certification for the jewels. Some people say that Juan Carlos has intervened so that, I'm telling you, yes.
I'm telling you, yes.
Of course, they can doctor the invoices a bit to back it up. And since he's being investigated, he has the right not to testify. And I think he'll prefer not to bring up the subject. Because besides, if he had proven the origin as a gift from some prince from those regions, he would have. The jewels would be worth more precisely because the jewels, among other things, have the appraisal that has been done. It's the appraisal of a jewel, but without taking the owners into account. It's not the same for a jewel that belonged to Empress Sisi as one that belonged to Mrs. So-and-so from the 3rd floor on the right or from the main floor at Diego de Leon Street, number 12. It's not the same. And then he finds himself in an internal contradiction, because if the value of the jewels goes up, the crime is even more serious and he would have to pay back even more money because that is the amount involved in the fraud.
This will be the first year, Carlos, that Zapatero doesn't go to Lanzarote for vacation and doesn't meet Sanchez at La Mareta like last year, like every year. What a shame, right?
Oh yes, Albert, because these people have lost their shame. They've lost their sense of reality. And I think that if he goes there, well, Sanchez would receive him at La Mareta and he could spend a few days there at our expense, right? But about this jewelry issue, beyond the fact that Zapatero can't explain anything because either they think we're idiots or they believe we don't know what happened. Zapatero stole from the state's assets a gift that was supposedly given to him by some leaders, Arabs, Saudis, and he put them in his safe and kept them for himself. He didn't declare them to the state. He didn't declare them to the tax authorities. He didn't declare them to anyone. He stole them and kept them, which means there's a blatant crime there. And the smoking gun evidence is the jewelry that the Central Operational Unit found in his safe. We'll see what else comes out of it later. But as a starting point, we're dealing with a thief who has stolen from Spain some jewelry appraised at $1,300,000. That's not the market price. As my fellow panelists said today, it depends on the jewelry, its origin, who owned it, and what the market value is. All those extra factors have to be added to the cost. A liter of gasoline isn't worth €1.50. The actual liter might be worth 20 cents maybe. The rest are extra charges like taxes and fees. Well, it's the same with jewelry. One thing is the raw material, which is what an appraiser values, and another thing is the market value, which is usually set based on public auctions of similar or comparable items that have been sold at auction. That's where the market value comes from. Therefore, Zapatero is just lying and trying to get fake invoices. That's all there is to it.
There are two peculiarities, or rather two hypotheses. First hypothesis, that it is indeed a gift from princes to Udis, from emirs and so on, and that he committed fraud by not informing the state, the public administration, and kept them for himself. That's one hypothesis. Another hypothesis is that often those who engage in irregular business abroad can't take cash out on the plane. And one tricky way to bring that money is you carry it on you. Or if you're traveling with your wife in this case, well, there are men's jewelry and women's jewelry. You come loaded with jewelry. Of course, that's not taxed because those are considered personal jewelry. And it's a way, for example, I'm not saying it happened, that drug traffickers use to make payments. These are jewelry pieces without the jeweler's mark. They're pieces of jewelry that aren't especially valuable in terms of their setting, nor delicate in their craftsmanship. They're simply made of gold or have some kind of sapphires, whatever it may be, so they can cross the border without having to pay taxes. So those two options are there. In any case, in both scenarios, it would still be a crime. So of course, he's at a dead end.
I lean toward the second scenario, the one about payment for favors. Because if that were a gift from the princes of the United Arab Emirates, that would come in a case. The setting, I'm told, is different. There's a jeweler's mark from the one who made them, a series of things you don't find here. But anyway, in the end, the result is the same. Do you know what we as civil society don't understand, Counselor? Judge Calama says he is allegedly the head of a criminal organization, Rodriguez Zapatero. Well, they haven't searched his house and he still has a diplomatic passport. So if he wants to go to Dubai tomorrow to pick up some more jewelry, no one can watch him or make him go through customs control, right?
That's the risk. Judicial decisions can be debated when someone doesn't agree with them. Of course, what we wanted, and that's what the lawyers for the private prosecution requested, because there are several of us, we're unified, was to request the withdrawal of the passport and a ban on leaving the country. Why? Because we believe that the risk exists. Who can guarantee this man won't go to China? To Venezuela, it's complicated, since if he goes there, given that Trump is the one who ultimately calls the shots there, it's hard to imagine him going there. But Cuba, same thing. He could go to Cuba, he could find refuge, but Cuba seems to be declining. It doesn't make much sense, but he could go to China. For me, of course, the risk exists at any moment, especially now that he feels cornered because he sees he has no defense. Because the first day he went to testify, he thought that going to court was like going to parliament. They ask him something, he answers, and that's it. No, there they ask you specific questions. You have to answer specifically. You have to at least provide some evidence for what you say. And this man hasn't proven anything. So the risk exists. The risk of fleeing is serious. Fleeing not just temporarily, but to never come back. No, Javier.
I'd like to ask you a question. Given the kind of man Zapatero is, who is so shameless that he's capable of getting his daughters into the mess they're in because of him, what would happen if Zapatero says that gift wasn't given to him? It was a gift given directly to his wife, who wasn't prime minister, so I'm not sure if she'd be required to turn it over to the state, because the crime would be less serious. In any case, a tax offense from the last 4 years for not declaring. But these people are registered in Madrid with the tax discounted by 99%, and it would only affect him when it comes to the tax on large fortunes. But be careful with that trick, because this guy is capable of telling his wife, "You're going to take the fall for something small, so I don't have to take the fall for something big."
He could do it, but it would be hard to make that stick. And I'll tell you why. Because the only crime, when someone is found with a large amount of cash or jewelry or high-value goods at their home, at work, or anywhere they are the owner and in control, what happens? The burden of proof is reversed in that case. It's the person under investigation who has to prove that the origin is legal. So, for him to be able to prove that they were really gifts to his wife, how is he going to do it? Because normally when princes give you things like that, which they do quite often, all these emirs, princes, etc., it's usually during an official trip, there are videos. We've seen, for example, when they gave Sanchez the bouquet of roses in Turkey, or we've seen the pistol that the Turkish president gave as a gift. So there should be images from those trips where that necklace was given to her, where those rings were given to her, right? That's complicated, and the burden of proof is on him. If they found 4 million euros in a safe at my house right now, I'm the one who has to prove where it came from. Because of course, otherwise, any tax fraud, any illegal origin of the money would go unpunished because it's very hard to prove under-the-table payments. That's what I mean. Impossible.
It's clear. Gentlemen, get ready because the week is heating up. On Thursday, Mercedes Gonzalez, the Director General of the Civil Guard and the Dow of the Civil Guard, will face the judge. You at Hasde Oir have requested pre-trial detention. Let's see if they listen to you this time. It's unprecedented for the Director General and the top official of the Civil Guard to be charged with serious crimes. They remain in their positions and can destroy evidence, manipulate investigations, do whatever they want because the members of the Civil Guard are still under their command, right? I've never seen anything like this, right, Javier?
With respect to the general, and even more so, and regarding the Director General of the Civil Guard, there's a fundamental issue to keep in mind. Zerdan was placed in pretrial detention at the time because the court believed that he could somehow influence other possible witnesses or suspects to destroy evidence, reach agreements, or coordinate statements in order to obstruct the investigation. Well, in this case, 2 people are going to testify who, among other things, are accused of opening disciplinary proceedings to sanction the UKIO members who were investigating the corruption. And are they still in their positions? Therefore, it's clear that there is a risk of destruction of evidence, of getting rid of inconvenient people, and the risk of flight. Well, here it's even clearer. Don't we remember that there was a director of the Civil Guard named Roldan who fled? What happened? That history can't repeat itself with a director or even a high-ranking civil guard general. I believe they should be sent to prison and at the very least be banned from leaving the country and have their passport taken away.
Look at what this listener is telling us, Carlos. I think you can understand everything he says. Guerrero.
Now it turns out that all the defendants are depressed. Lere Diaz is over there in his town, in a small town. Zapatero is very depressed, very sad. Julito too. Gertrude is the secretary. But while they were screwing over all of us Spaniards, they weren't depressed. Now they are, right? Now the full weight of the law had to come down on them. All of it.
In the end, they might convince a lot of people, Carlos. Careful, like, I didn't want to, I was forced, I didn't know what I was doing. I've even seen colleagues from the regime's press making excuses.
Of course, and besides, the socialists, you have to give them credit for this, have a communication machine and a really significant number of media outlets at their disposal. Beyond the famous 61 who shape public opinion, and really, there are people who watch the footage, who watch the news on La Uno or some, get their news from La Sexta or Cadena Ser. As they repeat the same message every day, they plant doubt, and that's something the Socialist Party specializes in. They've always done it, and they'll keep doing it. Well, I think this time the public has already caught on a bit by now. I mean, despite the silence, because look, even the silence of the unions with a guy who supposedly stole, well, not supposedly, who stole these jewels. What do you mean, supposedly? The jewels didn't just appear in the safe. He gave them to someone who took and kept them silently, if you'll pardon the redundancy. But even so, the machinery of the Socialist Party is very powerful. And unfortunately, the Spanish right has a serious communication problem. It's tremendous. Just look, with everything that's going on, in what we could call the Socialist Party's second big week, Feijóo showed up a few days ago and stirred up the whole absenteeism issue, which deep down he's right about, but he explained it terribly. And the day before yesterday, Mariano Rajoy comes out and says something really stupid, right? Today's news is talking about the French and the national team and about Rajoy. And they're not talking about how Begoña had to hand over her passport, or that today the provincial court decides whether she'll be put on trial or not, or that the day after tomorrow the Director General of the Civil Guard is testifying. Unfortunately, this is what happens to the left with a very powerful communication machine and a right wing that's useless when it comes to using communication strategies to explain to society the truth about what's happening. Look, they had it easy.
That's so true. Well, there's a scene you may have seen. It hurt me to watch it because I've been in similar situations in my professional life. The scene of Chintorra harassing Marta Gomez Montero on Spanish public television and the way she reacts. Marta is patient, thorough, and polite. In other words, the complete opposite of Chintorra. You know what I mean? And therefore, she was like a fish out of water and she snapped and couldn't take it anymore. It's worth watching again.
Marta, I'm not going to answer, Jesus. I'm sorry. You're not going to humiliate me again. I feel absolutely humiliated. I've put up with it for a long time. I've put up with it to pay the bills. I've put up with it for my kids, but I can't take it anymore. There's a wonderful book called No One Writes to the Colonel. And at the end, he asks her, the woman who wanted to sell the rooster, what are we going to eat? Well, shit. The main character says shit.
Well, without Centaura, I'd rather eat shit.
But what's wrong with you, Marta?
She puts down the microphone and leaves. I'd rather eat shit than stay here. You know, Javier, how much TV pays, which isn't much, but, well, if you go a couple of times a week, you can make 1,000 or a little more a month, right? The journalism profession is in a really bad state, and for 1,000 or so a month, there are people who can put up with what happened to Marta. Look, Televisión Española, just like La Sexta, just like many regime channels, Cadena Ser. For example, they have very specific people from the right to crush them, and they look for people who are never on the same level as the ones they put next to them, who are too polite, who don't know how to debate with the same strength. I mean, who are docile, what for? So that the host always wins. Who is the one who directs the back and forth at the table and the one who silences people when it's appropriate or when someone they don't want there gets too enthusiastic, right? It's all theater where they pretend to be on equal terms, but from the beginning of time, there's never been any equality there. I feel really sorry for Marta. I've written to Marta. I've invited her to the show. Her children are very young, and with the difficulties we all have, I understand it's not easy. And what I'm asking is for colleagues from major TV networks, decent ones, there are still a few left, to hire her, please, to give Marta a job. And to you all, I've never said this before, but I hope you stop watching Cintora's show. And if this is Televisión Española, as a member of the College of Journalists, I call for Televisión Española to be shut down once and for all. It can't cost us almost 1,500 million a year just to harass women who don't think like the boss. Carlos, you saw it, I'm sure.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with everything you've said. Both in the first part about the profile of moderate or center-right people that some shows choose to bring to their studios, and in the second part. And that's why I'd like to make a proposal. My proposal is that as a show, we join the protest that feminists in Spain have called against Televisión Española and Cintora. When is that protest? You know.
No, there is no protest.
What? The feminists haven't made a huge fuss about the harassment of a woman on a TV set? I can't believe it.
Yeah, me there already. I want to comment on several things, please.
Javier.
Regarding Cintora. Cintora is a very bad person. Many years ago, I used to be on some shows with him, and it's not unusual for hosts to be one way on the show and another off it. Maybe on the show, they have a tough, aggressive attitude, but off the show, they're very pleasant, polite, and well-mannered people. Not Cintora. Cintora is the same in person as he is on screen. Cintora is just like he appears on TV. That's a reality you have to keep in mind. Second point, this lady has shown real dignity because there are many people who, even when receiving those attacks, just endure and endure and endure because they put many other things ahead of their own dignity. She took a while to explode, but it was a brave act because things have to be called out as they are. And the third big point is the shamelessness of Cintora, because knowing what's going on, just keep quiet. But he puts on a half-ironic smile, pretending not to know what's going on. That's almost more painful than everything before. The fact that you see you've hurt someone. I'm not even saying you should apologize publicly, but at least don't gloat because it seems like he's gloating. I don't get it, he says. But what's wrong with you? He knows perfectly well what's going on. So the level of morality or moral perversion that has been reached in the public media is just unbearable now. It's unbearable under any circumstances.
To say that both Cintora and Televisión Española are so concerned that they've posted supportive tweets saying you can come back whenever you want. Well, they're lying, aren't they? They should say, whenever you want, you can come back and we'll keep harassing, bullying, and mistreating you. I hope this is a turning point. Hey, the harassment of female students ended Monedero's university career. Let's see if we can get the harassment of female journalists to put an end to this terrible Televisión Española, which is even worse because we all pay for it. I'm really outraged. It makes me really sad. Just like the professional associations, instead of now calling for the resignation of the general director or Cintora, they just keep a low profile. I don't support the journalists, but that's my stance. That's where I stand. Keeping a low profile, the associations.
Also, there's a detail we've forgotten. The media, among other things, are included in the Constitution and have a social function. And therefore, a public television should have as its function to promote honest debate of different ideas, contrast, so that the viewer can judge by hearing different arguments. From the moment that is no longer possible, the social function of Televisión Española and public media has disappeared. Therefore, it makes no sense to extend something that is nothing more than a mouthpiece for one ideological side. Besides, it's always the same, the left, because then, when the right wins, the same people still remain in the public media. And I'm not saying they should put their own people in, but rather people who are honest and capable of listening to both sides with integrity, with honesty, with freedom of opinion, and not this kind of Stalinist censorship they impose. Currently, in all public media, absolutely all of them.
You've spent many years on television, Carlos, and you've participated in 1,000 programs. Have you ever seen a Spanish broadcaster like this before? No.
No. But look, earlier you were saying and asking for some television network. You say there are still some decent ones left. Well, maybe we can agree there are some half-decent ones to hire this lady. No, I have a proposal. I think it's more serious, more profound. That no one should go to Spain's sectarian public television run by Pedro Sanchez. Any kind of center-right commentator or political analyst, don't go. And to the public, tell them not to watch, not to tune in. In my house, we don't watch Channel 1, Channel 2, or Ela Sexta. And we don't watch Channel 7 either, the one that's coming. That garbage they're already announcing because I can already see it coming. They won't connect it to my TV anymore. But having said that, what Spanish public television is doing now is pure partisanship. I mean, there are programs that aren't just fueling hatred, they're committing hate crimes every day. And all from the most sectarian point of view possible. And when they see a woman and on top of that they think she's vulnerable or weak, they trample her just like they always do, Fintora. But it's not the only show where women were humiliated. Here, if you're a woman and not left-wing, you can be trampled, harassed, or even raped. But if you're left-wing, nobody can even touch a fingernail because the unions, the feminists, the transsexuals, LGTBIH, JKLMQ, LGTBIH, all of them come out. All hell breaks loose. So that's enough already. You shouldn't go on Spanish public television. And you know that I've been offered to go on some shows from those networks and I've said, no, I'm not going to that garbage. And you shouldn't go. And don't come to me with excuses. Well, you know, they say you have to be there so your voice is heard. Nothing gets heard. They manipulate everything the guest says. You can't go. You can't go. Public television in Spain is a disgrace. And besides, they don't do anything good for people. Later, if we have a chance, we'll talk about it. After the fires in Almeria, I'll make a comment about public media as well.
We'll talk. We started today by giving numbers about those fires. We'll come back to it. Earlier, we heard from Annabel, Rosa, Pepe, and Karine from the United Kingdom.
If we thought it was outrageous that we had to pay for Mr. Avalos' escorts, well, then why do I have to pay for this man's vacation? I don't even want to say the rest. Why do I have to pay for his whole family's vacation?
Who paid for Sanchez's daughter's psychiatry degree? We did. All of Spain. What does that mean? That now we all have to go to her office and get treated for free because, of course, we all paid for it together.
This man who goes on vacation to Lanzarote for a month, I don't know what this vacation are going to be like. I don't know how the courts will be either, but I hope this is the vacation when the UCO shows up in Lanzarote and arrests this political vagrant, this indigent who is running our country.
I think that both girls' university education are being paid for by the Spanish people. Why has Sanchez gone, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 years without presenting budgets? Because I think that's the key to a lot of things. If you don't present the budget, it's because you don't want certain expenses to come to light.
Let's see. Officially, the family pays for it, but between the money from one daughter and the other, just the psychology degree has cost 180,000 euros. Either they've used their savings or, of course, the salary isn't enough. Javier, is this something to investigate? Is it enough to open a case or is it not that serious?
Sabinia didn't bring in much money. Right, Sabinia didn't bring in much money. At first, I want to assume innocence, because otherwise there would be a chain of responsibility involving many officials. If the university fees have been paid, I can understand that even, I'm going to say something that might be unpopular with our listeners, I can understand that even housing could in some way be covered by the administration or the state. Why? Because being the daughter of the Prime Minister, she needs certain conditions so she can have security detail to avoid risks. So, I can even understand that part of that expense could be covered. But when it comes to actual university expenses, not at all. So there must have been many officials involved. I prefer to think that Sabiniano, just like some people inherit jewelry and you don't know from whom, like Zapatero, while others inherit money, apartments, rents, like Begoña Gomez, and in her case, we do know where it comes from. This doesn't come from royalty. From the Middle East. It comes from some people who are neither princes nor from the Middle East.
Yes, well, and I have a date you should mark on your calendar, and we'll talk about it in the coming days. July 26th, Sunday at 8 in the evening. All right? Anyone who can come. Protest against the government of Pedro Sanchez in Marbella. They are organizing a big protest in Marbella. I'll tell you more in the coming days. July 26th, Sunday at 8 in the evening. There will be another one in Malaga afterwards. Malaga City. And I'm getting these images from Aguilas Murcia from last weekend. People on the beach and countless immigrants being dropped just a few meters from the shore. The Civil Guard helicopter recorded everything. They detained some, others not. With how easy it is to cross the border with your passport almost ready, right, Carlos? Why do they risk it so much?
They don't take many risks. They get through whatever they want because the Civil Guard lacks resources, because Marlaska has denied them the resources they need. I remember a few days after the Civil Guards died in that area. In the last incident, Marlaska was in the Senate boasting about the resources he had managed to increase for the Civil Guard. I mean, how can you have so little shame when the bodies of the Civil Guards are still warm after sending them out in a filthy raft? Imunda. Filthy. It cost their lives and you're boasting. What for? It doesn't matter. Smuggling, drug trafficking, the drugs coming in down there, mostly from Morocco, it's an established system. Do you really think it could take 20 years to find that tunnel connecting both sides, the one used to bring drugs into Spain? Who would believe that? A specialized Civil Guard unit could find it. I mean, they could find it in a week. Not in Spain. Why? Why? Because we don't give them the resources. We brag a lot about the Civil Guard, but we keep them in barracks that are falling apart. They're decrepit. Over there in Galicia, in my homeland, there are many, and I've seen them riddled with damp. 20-year-old cars. Some Civil Guard cars haven't even passed inspection. Of course, no one is going to find them, but in any case, they're putting the physical safety of the Civil Guard officers at risk. It doesn't matter. We're in a country where nothing matters with this government, period. We said it the other day. The immoral have gotten the better of us. They're in the government now. What will we do?
Picture that Pablo sent me of Atocha station. A bunch of people waiting for information, and most of the information desks are empty. We don't know if it's because they went to have breakfast or because they don't hire enough staff. This is also the image of Spain, providing service to people who demand, especially at this time of year, a ticket change, some information, anything. This can't be normal. And about the fires, Fernanda and Paulina make a comment.
Thank you. The heat by itself causes fires. Let's see if that's clear. This whole thing about climate change, that the heat, because of course, since it's so hot, there are fires, is a lie.
There is a product called EcoFire, invented by a Spaniard who spent 15 years testing it, which is wonderful and also environmentally friendly. You spread it, it's made specifically for fighting wildfires. You coat the ground and the vegetation with that liquid, and then it doesn't burn anymore.
You're watching the video of Cesar Salen, who is the Aragonese man that invented this product. And well, they simply don't use it in Spain because they say water is cheaper than doing that, which is gross negligence. We told you at the beginning of the program, in the last 15 years, the budget for fire prevention has dropped by 60% in Spain. There are only 7 operational amphibious planes. The rest are out of order. There are only 10 helicopters for all of Spain. The average that European countries spend is 0.5% of public spending on fire prevention. Spain is well below the average, even though we are the country that has 40% of all the fires in the European Union. I mean, this is a disaster. And Javier, when I hear them talk about climate change, all my alarms go off. It's the excuse of the incompetent, isn't it?
It's the excuse of the incompetent. Because it's hot in Spain, yes. It's always been hot, yes. Remember, if you look at old newspapers from 100 years ago, you don't see this many fires. You don't see such destructive fires. Why? Because things were done differently. Our grandparents and great-grandparents weren't stupid. Because the forests were cleaned. How? Through the shepherds who took their livestock to graze, and that meant that during the hot season, there wasn't any dry brush or anything like that. And another thing, because back then there were people who weren't paid, but they took care of the forests because they collected firewood, sold it, lived with dignity, and that way unemployment was solved. This was very typical in areas with common lands, but it started to deteriorate in the 19th century when the common lands were sold. But then, in every village, something was done every 2 years or every 3. It depended on the village. A lottery was held for the person in the village with the least economic means, and they were authorized to take care of the forest. He would make firewood, sell it, get richer, and clean the forest. None of this exists anymore. And now we have a lot of officials, a lot of technicians, a lot of everything, but we don't have shepherds or people who take care of the forests. That's the reason. And then incompetence, absolute incompetence. Because these fires, when they reach the scale that we've seen, the fires we're witnessing, an autonomous community or a province doesn't have enough resources. The state has to step in right away. That's why the UME was created. The army has to be there, apart from the UME, which is a military unit. But none of this ever gets put into action. Now, if there's a tragedy in Morocco, Spain immediately acts as if Morocco is, I don't know, the place we have to pay the most attention to. And not to the Spanish people, who are the most important. That's why a government is elected, so that Morocco doesn't govern us.
Spain's Pegasus, Spain's Pegasus. Carlos.
Yes. I have 2 things to say about that. One, the excuse of climate change. It's nothing, a big lie. The problem is fuel buildup, the abandoned forests, that's the real issue. Grazing has been penalized, and livestock are increasingly prevented from clearing those forests by grazing, and the state doesn't invest anything in cleaning the forests. And the communal forests, which belong to the people in the villages, nobody touches them because you end up angering half the village since they're the owners. So nothing gets done. Look, with 50 million euros, all the forests in Galicia could be cleaned. And if there's no dry fuel in the forest, the fire doesn't spread. And why do I say 50 million euros? Because if I'm not mistaken, that's the amount Spain gave 3 or 4 years ago to buy condoms in an African country. I think I remember that, right? And secondly, the 3 of us here know which number to call in case of an emergency. All of Spain knows it. You call 112 and report the disaster you've witnessed or the accident. Radio Nacional de España, if it had any use beyond the partisan politics it practices, was to provide a single frequency throughout Spain, because it has 100% coverage across the territory. And everyone knows that when there's a catastrophe, you tune in to FM 180 or 112, whichever they set, to standardize it. And then the national station provides information, much smarter than the Salva-me people who... and so on, which not everyone has access to. And there, a public broadcaster would provide a great public service. This is a proposal we're making from Castellón Confidencial, a radio station with the same frequency throughout Spain, so that the moment a catastrophe happens in any town in our country, it immediately starts providing information. The neighbors who need to evacuate, those who don't need to evacuate, live real-time information with a small radio, which everyone knows how to use. In every home, we would have real-time information, and we would avoid deaths like the one that happened. Not catastrophes. There have always been fires. There have always been arsonists. Disgusting politicians who have set forests on fire during election campaigns to harm a certain local or regional government. That has happened too. Here in Galicia, that happened, right? And later, someone was arrested with a clear connection to the independence parties who believed that fire was the destabilization they are always seeking. If there is no investment in cleaning the forests, if the dry fuel isn't removed, which is what spreads the fires with just a bit of wind, if that isn't done, it's all useless. And record this in the archives, because next year this argument I just made will be just as valid, because they won't do anything. I said the same thing last year, and here we are now.
The emergency radio station is so important as a place. Besides, nowadays everyone has a smartphone, and that's a radio. You don't even need a transistor. I'll give you one more piece of information we shared at the start of the show. The Spanish government now spends 3 times more on equality policies under Sanchez than on fire prevention. On equality policies, 525 million per year. On fire prevention, 115 million last year. And it's going down, 34 less than in 2022. But it's climate change's fault. What can I tell you? Some people tell me that with so much soccer, our brains are drying up. Listen to Angeles and Sylvia.
Why don't people go out into the streets and use that energy to shout until the whole world hears and listens to us? That's Spain for you folks, bread and circuses. This is to celebrate Spain's victory, to secure our children's future.
Not a soul is out there. Well, yes, I guess we'll get what we deserve. It's a shame.
Sylvia sent me this picture from Zaragoza, from the Plaza del Pilar in Zaragoza, which was packed when Spain won the last match. She says it's true. If you call people to a protest, only 50 show up. But for this, there's always time. And Maria talks about the grandchildren law. You have to tell me, because I know you've taken it to court. Javier, let's listen to Maria.
The people who left for other countries back then didn't just leave because Franco was here and they had to flee because they were socialists and left-wing. No. People like that were the minority. Most of them left because there was no work, just like it happens now, just like it has always happened.
That's how it is, Javier. They're using the grandchildren law to lump everyone together, aren't they?
Exactly. Since Adam and Eve, if someone has had any relative who was ever in Spain, they can now take advantage of the grandchildren and great-grandchildren law.
But also,
there is a historical manipulation. Part of the emigration was for economic reasons, others for political reasons, and others because they had pending issues with the law, because they had committed murders and robberies. Applying the criminal code in force in the Republic. It had nothing to do with Franco. They supposedly would have had to answer to justice, whether one side or the other governed, because they had violated the criminal code, but that's another matter. It's been 50 years since Franco died. In 50 years, if they haven't wanted to come back, it's because they weren't interested. But there's a detail. If you look at the law, it says that it's those who, the law and the application of the instruction, because we have filed a complaint against Sofia Puente for an instruction she issued that basically allows the law to be applied in all cases. But if you look at the law, it says that the law is meant to protect the descendants of those who fled because of political, ideological, sexual orientation, or gender-based persecution. What gender existed from July 18, 1936 to December 31, 1955? That concept didn't exist. But furthermore, if someone fled Spain to live their sexuality freely because they liked men as men or women as women, by definition, they didn't have children. By definition, they didn't have grandchildren. So it's all a joke, and I say this with all due respect, but to show that this is a joke. And what are they trying to do? What they're trying to do is not so much to create citizens or voters, but to create potential voters. Because if we remember that traffic campaign of "we can't drive for you," the government intends to say, "we're going to vote on your behalf." The important thing is not that they go to vote at the time. It's having a census there that they can use to assign those votes to the area that interests them because of the law. Distribution of seats. And that's so obvious. So yes.
But very obvious. But no one has challenged the last general elections of July 23rd of 23. And here on Saturday, we presented the evidence that there was allegedly a fraud of 500,000 votes. 500,000 who were not allowed to vote for an option, Javier.
But I go even further. When the law is enacted, well, the additional provision of the Democratic Memory Law, which is the additional provision, what is called the Democratic Memory Law. The Popular Party and Vox went to the Constitutional Court, but arguing that the law was discriminatory because it only protected the descendants of exiles, supposedly for political reasons, and that it should cover all exiles, also for economic reasons. The PP and Vox were blind. They don't realize that the reason for the persecution doesn't matter to the PSOE. The important thing was to create voters so they could take their place and vote for them. So, the PP and Vox, why don't they tighten the screws on this issue? Because they contradict the appeal they filed with the Constitutional Court, where they say it applies to everyone, which is what Sofia Puente is doing. She issues an instruction that says no. It's presumed that everyone who left from such year to such year, on the one hand, is the child of an exile. It's a presumption. Nobody knows why. And the second issue, then, when applying that instruction, it doesn't just affect the children and grandchildren, but also the great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. People are being regularized. They're applying for citizenship. People whose parents, their ancestors, went to the Americas in the 19th century when Franco hadn't even been born yet. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
What's wrong with them, Carlos? Why don't they tighten the screws? Don't they see that their democracy is being stolen from them little by little?
If they don't see it, it's because they don't want to. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, front page of the newspaper, Victor Angel Torres, Spanish government minister, headline, in 2027, 500,000 new voters will be able to vote in the general elections. The minister declared it. So there's no conspiracy theory here. There's no conspiracy. We're not making anything up. The minister himself has calculated and evaluated the number of voters that the implementation of this law will add. That's it. There's nothing more to look for. They're inflating the census, thinking that everyone who comes will vote for the left because they assume that since they're supposedly grandchildren of Republicans persecuted by Francoism, they're all left-wing. Maybe he'll be surprised, but maybe not. In any case, they're tampering with the census with bad intentions, manipulating the census with bad intentions. That's a serious attack on democracy, but does it matter? They've already taken it over. Spanish democracy has been, I was going to say 8, but for sure 4 years, hijacked, stolen from its true owners, which are all of us Spaniards. And nothing happens here. No one even has the guts to bring a no-confidence motion just to make the point for once. That holds a mirror up to Sanchez and tells him, you are a scoundrel. And also, since it's mandatory to present a government program, the candidate in that motion of no confidence has it very easy. It's just 3 lines. Not even Rajoy would get it wrong. My investiture speech is, I propose this motion of no confidence to immediately call general elections. Nothing more, and thank you very much. That's it, if that's what's expected.
At Actoir, we always say that the law of grandchildren is a deferred coup d'etat, and it's voter roll engineering. It's not social engineering because Vox and the PPPPS thought it was about them being able to vote. No, what's important isn't whether they vote. What's important is having a pool of voters they can manipulate and make it look as if they voted. The surprising thing is the following. Lere wasn't responsible for Correos. She didn't have anything to do with mail-in voting. So what happened? When the votes are counted in any election, the last 4 that have been held, the last 4 autonomous community elections, we see that the PSOE doesn't win any except in the overseas mail-in vote. Why don't we know about the domestic mail-in vote? Because since the domestic mail-in vote is put into the ballot box, we don't know how much influence it has compared to the rest. But the overseas vote is surprising, and it's because more people vote. Well, it's because voting with a digital ID from abroad has been allowed, which doesn't guarantee who is actually voting. These irregularities have made possible, above all, the way the provisions implementing the law are being applied. They are allowing people to choose the electoral board, the board where the electoral district where your vote will go, because they let you freely choose in which municipality. That's not how it works. If your grandfather was from Calahorra, you will have to vote in Calahorra. It's interesting that you can choose any municipality you want. We'll see that in the end, the municipalities that are mostly going to be selected will be those where the last seat is always being contested by just a handful of votes, by 500, by 1,000 votes. And that's the goal.
In Italy, for example, the Sierra vote, the foreign vote, is considered a single constituency. And that puts an end to the trick of placing the vote in Girona, in Soria, or wherever it suits you to get a representative. Ultimately, it's very serious that we are here, lawyers, commentators, analysts, and journalists, explaining how this is being committed. A small coup d'etat, an electoral fraud unfolding in slow motion, and that the parties, the ones who are going to lose because of this, are not the ones raising their voices. This makes me suspicious. Honestly, there would only be one explanation. It's true that Vox started doing it late, but they have started doing it. But the PP just raised their voice 2 days ago, and barely at that, almost apologizing for it, because they can't even mention the words electoral fraud. For them, it's like poison. Feiju hasn't said it at any point, only Ayuso dares to, right? It's horrible.
That's what's sad. They have issues accepting evidence because the same thing keeps happening. Vox, in the first elections where they run, the first person to hold office for Vox was Judge Serrano in the Andalusian elections. And with Serrano, certain polling stations were challenged, and it was found that, indeed, the count was incorrect. But since then, Vox has not challenged the vote count anywhere else. In those first elections, it became clear the vote count wasn't done as it should have been. The law exists to be followed and obeyed. The law requires the judge to open, read, and verify the envelopes.
They never do it.
It's not done. It's not done. And why doesn't Vox do it either, when at first, as I said, they did? Why did they stop doing it? We can't explain it. We can't explain it. Sometimes it seems that once someone is elected as a democratic representative and starts receiving official subsidies for seats, for public positions, it seems like they forget what things were like before. And they say, well, as long as I can secure my position. I'm not saying that's what happens, but it sure seems that way, since otherwise this silence can't be explained.
Mr. Javier Maria Perez Roldan, thank you for your time and for being here. I'm counting on you in the coming days, and get ready, because we need to put some people in prison to prevent them from leaving Spain. Help us.
Many of them.
Take care. Thank you. Goodbye. Secretary of Apto Apteoir and lawyer in all cases. Well, Carlos, just the right time to go away for a calm summer, right? Given the state Spain is in by mid-July.
Well, yes, that's right. And what's still to come, Albert? What's still to come? We're going to have to suffer a lot. I don't know until when. Until 2027, when people go to the polls. But please ask the Popular Party that they don't make any more statements, that it's better for them to stay silent, that things on the street are the way they are, that the wind is blowing in their favor, but that they shouldn't make any more statements. Unfortunate, no, not thought out, not considered. And to say goodbye now, Albert, I wish Pedro Sanchez and Begonia that their dental cosmetic treatment goes well. Most importantly, they chose the Quirón clinic for the procedure. I imagine maybe they were recommended by Isabel Ayuso's boyfriend, but it's at Quirón. They oppose private healthcare but use Quirón, and dislike private education but send their daughter to a private school in England. They don't like private healthcare, but when Carmen Calvo had a scare with the virus, she went to the Ruber clinic. They don't like anything, they don't like prostitution, but Amalos is a feminist because she's a socialist. And they don't like anything because, as Zapatero said, socialists are people who have very little and share a lot.
Well, if you haven't heard it, which I understand you couldn't, listen to the first interview we did today, right before you guys started. Because the prostitute who was with a very high-ranking government official is speaking out. She was undocumented, and he also abused her. She told us everything. I'm sure that if you listen to her, you'll immediately know the name of the person we're talking about. You'll see. Write it down for me, okay? As soon as you hear her, tell me. It's very easy. A hug, my friend. Thank you. Bye. Carlos Marcos, political analyst and one of our best panelists. Let's go to the newsroom for the latest messages. Susana Gas, tell us.
We're still here, Albert, in the Castilla newsroom and at Confidential, as always. summarizing all the comments and opinions from our insiders. Ines says that the weather manipulation we're experiencing in many parts of the country is also a problem that more and more people are concerned about. We want to know, we want to be informed in case something could happen to us. Jack Lemon is a very curious nickname. Every day that passes is one day less until they arrest the one guy. We have to have faith. Annabelle claims they want to destroy the countryside and the entire primary sector because they want us to starve, and there's no other reason. We must put an end to Pedro Sanchez and this government for good. Francesca also says we must strongly defend our farmers and ranchers who are essential to our food supply. PS says that we have to report the embezzlement of vacations, flights, the university, and other wasteful spending by this couple, Pedro Sanchez and Begoña Gomez, right away. Margarita shares a story from her own experience. She says she was at the 2017 elections. She was, in this case, a PSOE delegate at a polling station in Valencia. One thing really caught my attention. It was nearly 8 p.m. and the electoral board member kept repeatedly asking about the mailbags. Had they arrived? Where were they? And then they would go outside the polling station and secretly call someone. Maybe this is the beginning of what Albert Castillon always talks about in his podcasts. Odalan says that Venezuela is a piñata from which politicians and Venezuelans benefit, and foreigners too, without the well-being ever reaching the people. The people are never happy because they won't let them be happy. How it hurts to see my beautiful country suffer like this. Also, on the other hand, Carlos Ortiz from Canada reminds us of a story. He says, "Do you remember when Spain was a terrible country? Where only one member of the family worked. You could buy a house in your city, another one at the beach, your car, and have a big family. Do you remember that? That dangerous time when you could leave your front door open. Those were the days, right? And we'll leave it here. Let's see, Albert. It's important for you to know that you can follow us on all our channels, as well as at that online newspaper, castillonconfidential.com, so you can stay well informed."
Thank you, Susana. There are more stories, more messages in a minute.
915-930-40491. Completely trustworthy.
Dear Javi, thank you for your words.
Good day, Confidenciales. I think the term indispensables would suit you perfectly. Thank you all for everything for so much.
You're great, my friend. Well, there are many people who say encouraging things to us, and it's good for us to say these things to each other, even if it's just in a small group in the Confidenciales family. Jose Ignacio is very attentive to what we say and corrects something that I think I said about the movie Citizen Vigilante. Remember?
They're making a mistake by comparing this Citizen Vigilante movie to the one by Clint Eastwood. In the Clint Eastwood one, he was a cop, let's say a violent one, who took his job seriously. And this one, the Citizen one, is similar to the Charles Bronson movies. They're just like the Charles Bronson movies. The only difference is that back then the problem was gangs, and now the problem is people from Africa.
Yes, sir. Charles Bronson's movies are much more fitting for Citizen Vigilante because it was an ordinary person, not a cop, who took justice into his own hands. Thanks for paying such close attention. Well, politicians in jail, a whole bunch of them. Pay attention because a lot of you have sent me this. Behind bars are Zapatero, Sanchez, Begoña, all of them. Take a look.
Jose Luis, where are you, bastard? Don't leave me alone. I'm here.
Damn it, it's not you. He's asking about his friend Avalos. Pedro, are you there, Pedro? Or have you left me alone again? No.
It's just that you're here, Begoña. I'm not to blame for anything.
If I went out partying and had a hell of a good time, it's Judge Paynow's fault.
Who the hell touched my boob?
It's clear that I didn't. I would have liked to. Damn! I know this boob. Oh!
Oh, that was Santa Lala, and this is Javier. God damn it.
There's no more room for us?
Oh, stop. Leave it there. They don't fit in this overcrowded jail? Well, this one's better. Sanchez in the trenches, yes. With Donald Trump and Marlaska, among others.
Pedrito, move forward or I'll slap some tariffs on you that'll make you crap yourself. I'm just scared. And if there's some fascist who insults me, don't worry, boss. I've got your back. No, damn it. I'm sure there's a Valencian nearby. They're everywhere. He has a bad temper and one of them hit me with a stick. Calm down.
Leave him alone.
In the end, the bravest one was Trump. This one wins hands down. This meme, Francisco says one chicken to another. He says, I told you to put on sunscreen. And there you can see the chicken with this heat. I'm not surprised. And another meme, jewelry store, Zapatero's mother-in-law. Jose Antonio sent it to me. He says, now I understand the jewelry thing, of course. And Freud Lannister, Angeline, sent it to me. Imagine in Moncloa, Sanchez with Bolaños, who's like Sergio's girl. He's watching soccer, the World Cup.
Mortadelo, come here already. I'm out of ham.
I'm coming. Here you go, your Sanchedad. Is Mr. Sonos happy with this country's goal? I didn't know you supported the national team.
I back the team Sanchez Bolaños. When they discuss the team, they focus less on what we steal. Holy shit, you've got to be kidding me. Hi, Mohammed, how are you? Is something wrong? I'm sorry about Morocco. The French can't be trusted.
Julia Pedro, I'm very angry. And I've decided that I can only be happy if I get the World Cup final. So, if you don't want your WhatsApp to be sent to Vito Kilias, you know what you have to do. Of course.
Certainly, Mohammed. Send my regards to everyone. Bolaños, you idiot. Call FIFA and say we're generously giving the World Cup final we organized ourselves to Morocco.
At your command.
Bolaños, what are you doing? You're taking the ham 4 eyes.
Oh, that's true. Sorry, young Moroccan, I'm leaving.
I can't believe I have to do everything.
I like the part where Mohammed VI says goodbye to Sanchez by saying, give my regards to your ladies and gentlemen. I'll leave it at that. Well, one more. Ignacio, pay attention. The photo you sent me says, you can see a real manhole cover. In the photo, a manhole cover that says Correos, it says, these are the state's dirty underbelly. No doubt about it, my friend. Well, and many thanks to Diego Torres for the donation and to Antonio Pedro Gonzalo FF. Every first of the month, we receive some donations that make us very happy because they help us keep the machine running so we can still be here tomorrow. Thank you for being there and see you tomorrow, Confidenciales.
You know it and I know it. We are confidential. You are confidential. I am confidential. All confidential. All confidential. But only for open minds. And for people who are wide awake, truly awake. From the trench, the bullets whistle and there's no way out. To get out there, here freedom has wings of wax. Alberca is Albert Castellon. Susanna Gach. Your girl is myself. And so on. Thank you very much. Skids gadalidu badalidu with the sun and a cake. See you tomorrow at thank you. Hasta mañana a las 8.
Castillón Confidencial by Albert Castellón.